It was 5 degrees this morning. We felt it. Brr. As of tonight, there is still snow on the ground, and yet somehow we are preparing for a historic March heat wave. Thanks for joining us. I'm Kim Christensen.
And I'm Kyle Clark. So Colorado is Coloradoing in pretty spectacular fashion. You truly are going to go from winter to summer. 9 News meteorologist Chris Bianchi's along. And Chris, this is beyond the weird, the wacky weather that we talk about from time to time in Colorado. I mean, this is like nothing that anybody has seen in recorded history.
Exactly right. This is truly historic. The upcoming heat wave we're talking about here in Colorado, this is not just, oh, we're going to spike up to 70, maybe 75, get a little taste of spring. This is a full-fledged midsummer heat wave that we're going to get later this week in the middle of March. Wild stuff. Eastern Plains, Burlington, we're going to be in the low 90s out here later on this week. This is what it looks like out there right now. That view courtesy of our cameras there at Viera Wireless, from Viera Wireless. And Loveland Ski Area, we do have a few flakes here in the high country. Not a big deal. A little bit gusty up here in the mountains as well. As always, be careful you're driving through the mountains, but for the most part, I think we're generally on the calm side. I was just looking at the cameras there in the mountains. Bertha Pass, Rabbit Ears Pass, Eisenhower Johnson Tunnels. We are not talking about snow-covered roadways. It's smooth sailing there in the high country, just again a little bit windy right now. Mid-40s in Denver at the moment. We topped out at 53 officially out at the airport earlier on today. 30s, 40s, Eastern Plains, and in the mountains right now. Satellite radar, this is the thing to focus in on, that big old H out in California. That brought temperatures into the 90s and even low 100s in California today. That is going to bring us that historic heat later on this week. I'll tell you how hot it gets and when that heat wave peaks and when it goes away in my full forecast in just a few minutes.
The first strike in the American meatpacking industry in more than 40 years is underway in Greeley. Nearly 4,000 employees at JBS went on strike this morning. The union that represents them has been negotiating a new contract with the company for months. The union says JBS is forcing people to pay for their own protective equipment on the job and isn't offering fair wage increases. JBS denies that and says the wage increases are in line with national averages.
This is an immigrant workforce, but they're doing some of the hardest and most dangerous work that you can imagine, but really important work. I mean, they feed our country.
JBS says that it produces enough food for 280 million meals per day for its plants nationwide. The company says it's moved production to other JBS plants for the duration of this strike.
More airports around the country are experiencing long security lines, like snaking around buildings long. It's the busy spring break travel period, but TSA officers are also working without pay. Take a look at the nightmare in Austin. The long security lines are caused in part by the partial government shutdown. Many are calling out, some are even quitting. A spokesperson for DIA says those kinds of backups aren't being felt in Denver yet.
Thankfully, we have not been experiencing that in Denver. Our TSA workers are showing up to work here in Denver, but of course, it's a day-by-day situation, right? And the longer this goes on, the more unknowns as we push forward through this. And we want to make sure that they have what they need to be able to get to work and be supported.
While DIA isn't having problems with TSA lines, they are seeing lots of impacts from storms on the East Coast. According to FlightAware, hundreds have been delayed today and dozens more have been canceled. A couple of crosswalks along Colfax are back to their regularly scheduled messaging after they got hacked over the weekend.
Somebody replaced the audio with messages critical of President Trump. 9 News reporter Janelle Finch is along now with details on what happened and then how the city's handling it. Janelle?
Videos that went viral showed the messages alternated between an expletive against President Trump and apparent reference to the bombing of an Iranian school. The audio did still say when it was safe to walk.
The walk signal is on. Trump murders children. The walk signal is on.
Denver's Department of Transportation and Infrastructure says just 2 intersections were hacked, Colfax and Washington and Colfax and Pearl. They have since been fixed. The department says the crosswalks were newly installed and the buttons weren't meant to be operational yet. Dottie says the crosswalk's factory setting included a default password that was easily found online, likely used to put in the custom message. Dottie says they've changed the password at these locations and do not expect this to happen again. A similar situation was reported in Seattle and parts of California last year. Those crosswalks were hacked with faked audio from Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, and Jeff Bezos. In the studio, Janelle Finch, 9 News.
Investigators say there's no evidence to suggest that somebody deliberately set the fire in Thornton that led to evacuations and closed part of I-25. Thornon Fire said today their investigation into that fire on February 25th is over without a determination on the cause. They do know where it started, a mulch bed at a school playground. Fire investigators say that video shows people walking nearby, but nothing suspicious. The owner of a car restoration business told us that fire destroyed nearly 150 cars on his lot. And a modular home builder said one of the domes set up outside their business was also lost in that fire.
A former funeral home owner in southern Colorado who helped her ex-husband hide nearly 200 decomposing bodies was sentenced to 18 years in prison today. Carrie Halford had faced up to 20 years after pleading guilty to conspiracy to commit wire fraud. She and her ex-husband John took $130,000 from families who went to the Return to Nature funeral home in Penrose for funeral services. Some were given urns filled with concrete mix instead of their loved ones' ashes. They also defrauded the federal government of nearly $900,000 in pandemic relief funds. Carrie also faces up to 35 years in prison for state charges of abusing a corpse. Her ex-husband has already been sentenced to 20 years on federal charges, 40 years on state charges, which he will serve at the same time.
A federal judge in Boston is blocking federal health officials from cutting the number of vaccines recommended for every child. Today's ruling stems from a lawsuit that the American Academy of Pediatrics and other medical groups brought against the Department of Health and Human Services. It argues that Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s changes to vaccine recommendations and to a vaccine advisory committee violate federal law. In January, Kennedy and the CDC reduced the number of recommended shots from 18 to 11, dropping recommendations that all babies get vaccines meant to protect against hepatitis A and B, RSV, dengue, and 2 types of bacterial meningitis. Today's ruling also put on hold the new members that Kennedy has appointed to the CDC's Vaccine Advisory Committee since June. That group now includes several anti-vaccine voices. A popular menopause treatment has been gaining in popularity, and lately it's been in very short supply.
9 News reporter Rachel Krause joins us. And Rachel, doctors say finding a fix might not happen quickly.
Yeah, experts say part of it is the increased demand, and part of it is manufacturers that are unable to provide enough supply of estrogen products. But it's been happening for months now, and women are frustrated.
But our system has not been built to facilitate meeting women's needs.
Menopause. The symptoms can be uncomfortable. For generations, women have suffered silently. Dr. Jill Liss has seen that trend turn around.
And it's really only in the last couple years, for various reasons, both cultural shifting narratives, more advocacy online, better understanding of the science, and really a generation of women who refuse to tolerate poorly controlled symptoms.
Dr. Liss is a menopause specialist at UC Health. She says there are multiple treatments for menopause. The most popular, the estradiol patch.
It's something that women have been using for a long time and very successfully.
And that really just helped with a ton.
Popular and lately hard to find.
You go pick it up and they're like, sorry, we don't have this.
Michaela Macklin has been using the patch to help her symptoms. Hormones that are thrown out of whack when she can't access estradiol.
It's annoying. You get no information from CVS, or I'm guessing several pharmacies. They actually ran a search for me in December when I was in the drive-thru. They were like, let us see if we can find it anywhere else in the state. And they were like, there is none in the state of Colorado.
Dr. Liss says it's been a problem for months.
Yeah, it's really complex.
The why isn't a simple answer.
Medicines in general are pretty vulnerable to supply chain issues. Many of the raw ingredients come from other countries, and then there are really delicate frameworks in place for supply chain, processing, all of that. I think between maybe bad crops, tariffs, geopolitics, all of that, then you see this increased demand. We've got a pretty large mismatch of supply and demand when it comes to these hormones.
Liz says alternatives can help fill the gap for women until supply once again meets demand.
I feel optimistic that they will be resolved. Will they be resolved on a time frame that I think is acceptable? Probably not.
Dr. Liz says there are options for women impacted by the shortage, calling around to see what pharmacies have it in stock, trying different dosages, or trying a name brand. And there are also oral and transdermal options. Liz says the workarounds can be just as effective in managing menopause. That's good news for many women right now. Rachel Krause, 9 News.